What's up guys, Porter here bringing you the best OBS Studio recording settings. Last video I did the streaming settings. If you would like to see that one, you can find the link in the description below. Let's get right into this. First we're going to go up to File, then to Settings. That's going to bring you to the General tab. In the General tab, all you're going to want to do is select your language and your theme. I personally use dark because it's easier on the eyes. The rest of these settings are pretty self-explanatory and you could do with them what you like. Now we're going to skip the stream section on the left as this is a video for recording, not for streaming. So let's go right to output. This will put us in the streaming section, so let's just quickly switch to recording. And now we're in the part that actually matters. The first option, you're going to want to have type set as standard. After that, you're going to select your recording path. This is where your videos will save to. Then you're going to see generate file name without a space. If you don't want spaces in your file names, you could check this box. After that, we have your recording format. I strongly recommend you use MP4, especially if you're going to be editing these videos after you record them. There are these other options, but MP4 is by far the best in my opinion. Now we have audio track. I personally split my audio into 3 different tracks. One for the desktop audio, which if I'm recording PC will pick up the game and my friends' voices. One for my mic, and one for if I'm recording on PS4, then that my Elgato will pick up the PS4 through that audio track. The reason for doing this is so when I go into my editing software, say I don't want my friends' voices in the recording, I could simply just get rid of that audio track and have my mic and the PS4 sound. At the end of the video, I'll run through how to set that up very quick so you could do that yourself. Let's move on to Encoder. You may have multiple options here. For me, I have X264 and NVENC. NVENC is if you have an NVIDIA graphics card. You may also have QuickSync, which is for if you have an Intel processor. If you're going to be streaming and recording at the same time, I would highly recommend using X264 for streaming and NVENC or QuickSync for the recording side of it. For the sake of this video though, I'm going to go over X264 settings and NVENC settings. We're going to start with X264. So now you're going to see rescale output. I am not going to check this box and I will explain why later. Then we're not going to set anything for custom muxer settings. We can ignore these warnings and move on. For rate control, you're going to want to have this on CBR. That is a constant bitrate, which means it will try to keep the bitrate around whatever you set yours at. For the bitrate, I personally am using 30,000, but right now I'm going to flash up an image on screen, which will be the YouTube recommended settings. As you can see, if you're running 1080p and 60 frames per second, you're going to want to run 12 megabits per second. This translates to 12,000 in OBS. However, I feel that anywhere between 25,000 and 30,000 gives you a good level of quality and performance. I would not go any higher than 50,000 for this setting. You will need to play around with it to see what works best for you. And lastly, before I forget, this setting will improve your quality the higher you go, but it will also increase the size of the file. Now let's move on. We're not going to select this box, we're just going to leave that unchecked. Now we have Keyframe Interval. For streaming, the recommendation was 2, but I have read for recording that we could leave this as 0, so that's what I'm going to leave mine at. Now we have CPU usage preset. For this option, the higher you go on this list, the less CPU you're going to be using. So if you use ultra fast, you're going to be using the least amount of CPU you could possibly use. And if you use placebo, you're going to be using the most amount of CPU you could use. This setting is also for your quality. The default for this is very fast, but I use faster. I would recommend only using very fast, faster, or fast. The option most people use is very fast. However, like I said, I do use faster, seeing as my PC can handle it. You will need to play around with that setting to see which works best for you. After that, we have profile. For this, you're going to want to leave it on main. For tune, we're going to leave that on none. We're not going to check this box, and we're not going to put anything in this section here. Now let's change the encoder to NVENC. For NVENC, we're still not going to set a rescale output, and we're still not going to put anything in this box. We're going to move right down to rate control, where we're still going to leave that at CBR, which like I said is a constant bitrate. Now that we're using NVENC, which will free up CPU and use more of your graphics card, we are going to make the bitrate a little higher. So for me, I'm going to set mine at 40,000. The reason for that is with NVENC, if you don't have a high enough bitrate, it won't look as good as X264. But seeing as we're recording, we could set the bitrate pretty high, so we're able to use it and use 40,000 bitrate. For the keyframe interval, we're going to leave this as 0. Now on to the preset. For the preset, people tend to recommend a variety of different things. I've seen default, I've seen high quality, and I've seen high performance. I personally leave mine on default, but you could play around with these other 2 settings based on your PC and see how they work for you. I'm just going to leave mine on default though. For profile, we're going to leave this on main, and level we're going to leave on auto. Now we see use 2-pass encoding. This option will make your video look slightly better and also make the files slightly smaller. However, if you're streaming and recording at the same time, I would not recommend using this as it could cause some performance issues. For me though, I'm going to leave it checked because I want the best quality possible. I'm going to leave GPU at 0 and B frames at 2. Now let's move on to the audio tab. Here in the audio tab, for the streaming settings I recommended using 192, but for recording we're going to change this to 320. We're going to do that for each recording track that we are using. The reason for that is we want the best audio quality possible, and messing with the audio will not impact your performance too much. Now that we're done in the output section, let's move on to the audio tab. In this section, we're going to want to have the sample rate at 48 kHz. Then we want channels at stereo. After that, you're going to want to select your devices that you'll be using. For me, I have my desktop audio device on default, and my mic is on my Blue Yeti. This lower section you could change based on what you would like to use. Finally, let's move on to the video section. In this section, you're going to want to have your base resolution as whatever your monitor size is. For me, I use a 1920 by 1080p monitor, so that is what my base resolution is. For the output resolution, you're going to want to make that whatever you want your video to come out as. So for example, I record in 720p and 60 FPS, so I have mine set at 1280 by 720. After that, we're going to have Downscale Filter. The default for this is 16 samples, but I personally use 32 samples. This will give me the best quality I could possibly get, but it does use some CPU, so change this only if you have the power to do so. Lastly, we have FPS. Like I said, I use 60 FPS, but depending on your PC, you may want to use 30 FPS. In my personal opinion, 60 FPS is much more important for shooter type games, but if you can run it, I would definitely do it anyways. If not, 30 is perfectly fine. Now very quick to go over how to set up multiple audio tracks. Next to Mixer, you're going to see a little settings icon. You're going to want to click that. Now to the right, you'll see the different tracks. I have my desktop audio going to track 1, so for desktop audio, all I have selected is 1. The mic goes to 2, so that's all that's selected, and the Elgato goes to 3, so that's all that's selected for that one. Now if you're streaming as well, you're going to want to have 4 selected for every single one of these, and in your streaming settings, make the audio track 4. That will pick up all 3 things in one. However, in the recording settings, we did not select track 4 as we only want the 3 different audio tracks. And that's all you'll have to do for that. That's all I have for you today. I hope I helped, and I hope you enjoyed the video. If I did, please remember to comment, like, and subscribe, and we'll see you next time. Peace.
Bye.